Hey, what's shaking, everyone? So, according to the Department of Homeland Security, white supremacy is the greatest threat at a domestic level for the United States. And I tend to agree, and I think throughout the course of this video I should be able to convince you something similar. But let's start with the Politico article here. DHS draft document, White Supremacists Our Greatest Terror Threat. White supremacists present the gravest terror threat to the United States, according to a draft report from the Department of Homeland Security. Two later draft versions of the same document, all of which were reviewed by Politico, described the threat from white supremacists in slightly different language. But all three drafts described the threat from white supremacists as the deadliest terror threat facing the United States. And what I already said, I do my homework. Listed above the immediate danger from foreign terrorist groups. Foreign terrorist organizations will continue to call for homeland attacks, but probably will remain constrained in the ability to direct such plots over the next year, all three documents say. Oh, Russia! Russia probably will be the primary covert foreign influence actor and purveyor of disinformation and misinformation in the homeland, the document also says. I don't necessarily agree with that. I think China's a far greater threat, and President Trump's also taken actions to quell their influence. You just look at what he drafted up it's been about a month ago now, with the executive order regarding any sort of companies based in China it's not even companies that are based in China, rather it's any companies that have influence and pay money to the Chinese government. If they don't correct their cash flow within 45 days of the signing of the executive order, correct me if I'm wrong, but they have to sever those ties and can no longer support the Chinese government under threat of having their assets seized. It's a huge deal. Signing that executive order shows that there is a significant threat from China. You'll have the leftist harpies screaming, "Oh, my Russia interference in the upcoming election." Yeah, fuck off. It's not even nearly as important. There's no proof to say Russia's a gigantic threat anyways. What? In the last election cycle, a few $100s worth of Facebook ads? Yeah, go fuck your mother. So like I stated from the onset, I think that this is a brilliant move, calling white supremacy the greatest domestic terror threat. Because you look at the edict of the Black Lives Matter rioters that are out there right now. What are they screaming? What are they against? They're against the white supremacists that are out there. Oh my god, they're in the shadows. They're coming to kill all of us. Doesn't fucking happen. What are there, like a handful of Klansmen left? Let's look at what's actually being claimed as being white supremacists, or what the ideas of white supremacy are. I have an article pulled up. You might have seen this before. This is a graphic. What they're claiming in this graphic is aspects and assumptions of whiteness and white culture in the United States. White dominant culture, or whiteness, refers to the ways white people and their traditions, attitudes, and ways of life have been normalized over time and are now considered standard practices in the United States. And since white people still hold most of the institutional power in America, we all have internalized some aspects of white culture, including people of color. So what they claim to be a white culture or whiteness: rugged individualism, the family structure, emphasis on the scientific method, history, Protestant work ethic, religion, status, power and authority, future orientation, time, aesthetics, holidays, justice, competition, and communication. Literally everything is responsible because white people made it so, according to the wonderful people at the African American History and Culture. What does this have to do with white supremacy? Well, when you start attributing every single aspect of life to white people and whiteness, I think the title of this article is going to give you a fair descriptor into what I'm thinking. Is the anti-racism training industry just peddling white supremacy? I don't know about you, but every aspect that makes a person successful can't be contributed to whiteness. I'm not too sure about you, but Carlos Slim is like, what, the third or fifth most wealthiest human being on earth, and boy, he is super Mexican, right? Scale that down a little bit. Have you ever seen a black doctor Have you ever seen a Mexican lawyer? Have you ever seen a female judge of color? Yeah, these things exist. They aren't just white people. But they think that they have their bases covered when they think, successful people of color that adhere to that previously stated list, that they're just merely internalizing their whiteness. I think that they're internalizing horseshit. What do I know? I'm just a man who turns on a camera and rants to a screen for a couple dozen people, and I really do appreciate you guys watching. That's not being facetious. Now, another term I'd like to introduce, or at least refresh you on, is probably the only good thing that George W. Bush contributed to the societal lexicon, is the soft bigotry of low expectations. What W was referring to, and there are these good white liberals out there, and there are, of course, these impoverished, poor, uneducated minorities out there that couldn't properly behave in society and would need the help of the white liberals out there to raise them up, because they couldn't be left to their own devices to figure out how to exist in society properly. No. Leave it to the good white man to help you out. That's an abhorrent way to live your life. And that's exactly why this list is so abhorrent, because it takes that phrase and extrapolates it out so far, and it sets the boundaries so clearly that only white people can show people of color the way forward. Disgusting, really. This is really an evil premise. It attributes all of your success to something that you have no say over, that you have no ability to really change. And personal responsibility and personal growth are two things that I hold very, very highly. And I know you might be thinking that this is just some fringe ideology that's merely in a wing of the Smithsonian Institute, and don't worry about it, don't put so much thought into it. Well, this poisonous ideology is being taught everywhere. It's being taught from primary school all the way and university, and it's being taught in workplaces, in the private sector as well as in the public. And the proper terminology is critical race theory. To me, it's easily the most cancerous ideology that has ever gained mainstream acceptance in society. And this is political correctness reaching its final form. That is why what President Trump did yesterday has such enormity that it cannot be overstated. Let's pull up the next article here. Trump ends critical race theory training for federal employees, calls it a sickness. Trump said the training cannot be allowed to continue. Let's take a look. The Trump administration is halting critical race theory training in federal agencies, with White House officials calling it anti-American propaganda. Absolutely. This is a sickness that cannot be allowed to continue, President Trump tweeted. Please report any sightings so we can quickly extinguish. Great. So it's taking effect right now. Russ Voigt, director of the Office of Management and Business, wrote a memo informing agencies of Trump's instructions to stop using controversial forms of training on critical race theory, white privilege, and any other training or propaganda efforts that teaches or suggests either that the United States is an inherently racist or evil country, or that any race or ethnicity is inherently racist or evil. It has come to the president's attention that the executive branch agencies have spent millions of taxpayer dollars to date training government workers to believe divisive, anti-American propaganda, Vought wrote in a memo to heads of federal agencies and offices. Vought cited reports of executive branch employees being taught in the classes designed to educate employees about white privilege and other concepts, that virtually all white people contribute to racism, and that it is racist to believe that America is a land of opportunity. These types of trainings not only run counter to the fundamental beliefs for which our nation has stood since its inception, but they also engender division and resentment within the federal workforce, Vought said. I hope this gets extrapolated out into the private sector and to every other country in the world that is taking note of what the president just did. If this is the first step, it's a brilliant first step. That's why I brought up this first article. White supremacists are greatest terror threat. Here's the connection. In my opinion, I think President Trump is going to come out once this document is perfectly drafted up. He's going to present it and state that white supremacy is the greatest terror threat domestically as found by the DHS, and expose these critical race theorists, the Black Lives Matter activists, Antifa activists, all of these psychotic university professors as white supremacists based on their ideology, based on their own teaching, and catch them in their own net. I know I shouldn't have to tell you this, but it's okay to be who you are. If you're a good person with good morals, you're good to yourself, you're good to your family, you shouldn't have to feel bad about that. If you've been subjected to any of this mind virus training and you're starting to doubt yourself, don't. This is all horseshit. It's unresearched, unverifiable crap, and now it's being called out as such. Like, it's sad, right? I research hours and hours on end to make these videos, and I'm reading these articles, and there's always common sense statements that are made from the different individuals interviewed. They're saying things like, I'm voting for Trump because he stands for law and order. It's really sad. Baseline constitutional practice as a reason that they're supporting the president in the upcoming election. And that's why you have the people on the left. The people that are out there running around saying, oh, Trump is orange Hitler. Oh my God, this guy is so unhinged. It's pure projection. All they're doing is causing this division. If they would just listen to what the president actually has to say instead of listening to the spin jobs, they would realize that what Trump is doing as opposed to what they're being told he says are two very different things. And once you realize that, it's really hard to go back and take any of their bullshit again. I'll leave you guys with that. That's just my thoughts on the subject. I think Trump's going to make the connection between white supremacy and what Black Lives Matter's actually peddling and trap them in their own game. But anyways, guys, I've been Don Khan-Swaylo. I want you to go out there. I want you to follow your gut. Get after it. Take care, everyone.